Welcome to this episode of the Star Wars Universe Podcast. Today we are continuing our watch of the Clone Wars final season, Season 7, and today we're covering Episode 2, where the Bad Bunch tries to find Echo. All that and more after this commercial break we have no control over. Welcome back. This is Matthew, your host. I'm joined again by Paul Hoppy, my co-host for this final season. Paul, how are we doing today?
Doing pretty good.
Great. Glad to have you all around. And also, my apologies. When this episode went out yesterday, the first episode, we had an ad at the front. There's a screw-up with our podcast host that should be fixed. If you re-download it, there will not be an ad right at the front, only that ad after the intro. But we are trying to minimize the number of ads that we send you guys, and our apologies for that. But yeah, so today let's talk about Episode 2, in which it's a busy episode, but I feel like there's not too much to the plot. Basically, it's the clones with Anakin alongside them this time travel to the planet where Echo is being held, and where we find out that Wat Tambor of the what is it, the Techno Guild? No, it's not the Techno Guild. It's the corporate.
I'm just going to call them the Technocracy. No,
yeah, there you go. But yeah, a group that is officially neutral, but is clearly not.
Right.
They're holding Echo. The whole thing was set up to be a trap, but our heroes find a way to get out of it with much struggle. And at the end, they find what looks like Echo's body, at least. Tambor has said that he is dead, but only his mind belongs to them. But they see what he seems to be alive, and at least by some definitions,
right.
They unplug him, and the episode ends with our heroes, flying back home, having rescued their friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your overall take on this episode?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it seems like there's a lot happening, but not really a lot happens. Like, basically, yeah, they go to rescue Echo, they find Echo, like the end, right? It's very it feels like the middle part of I don't know whether it's a 3-part arc or going to be more than that, but the first one, it's like, they're like, what's up? It's like, oh, maybe this is Echo. Then they're like, is it Echo? Yeah, it's Echo. And then the next one, maybe we'll be like, okay, what happens and what's the fallout of that?
Yeah. One thing I noticed early on, and the narrator has always been one of the sort of interesting points of the Clone Wars, and you're always kind of wondering to what extent is he a reliable narrator. And in some cases he is, in some cases he very much isn't. I was annoyed that he starts out by saying, our heroes have discovered that Echo is still alive.
Yeah. Me too. I was like, did they? Didn't they discover evidence that he may be alive, but not proof? Like,
right.
That seems like they're like at the end of episode 1, it's like, here's a question in this mystery. And then in the beginning of episode 2, they're like, yeah, that's what that thing was.
Yeah.
You're like,
especially
okay.
Because one of the major tensions of this episode, and to some extent this plot arc we're seeing, is that Rex very much wants to believe Echo is alive.
Right.
And most other people think he doesn't have enough evidence for it, and that there's a lot of real tension. And the interesting thing about, Echo is now kind of really following his emotions and maybe not being so logical. And,
Rex.
He kind of Rex, sorry, yeah. And he's kind of having a moment with Anakin of, like, I learned it from watching you.
Right, yeah, exactly.
In a kind of fun scene Padme points out.
Yeah, so, she's like, where could he have gotten that from?
I was definitely a little frustrated by
Ahsoka.
That moment.
Wait, no. The same place she got it from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On that subject, I will say, I think the conversation between Anakin and Padme was my favorite part of the episode.
Really?
For a couple of reasons. One, and the Clone Wars has done this a couple of times, but I think this episode really, really did it. It established what the Clone War movies never did, which is actual chemistry between Anakin and Padme.
Yeah.
And an actual feeling that they actually, they're bickering with each other, but it's in that it doesn't seem like people who don't like each other fighting. It seems like people who really care about each other bickering.
It feels real. It adds some actual depth to their relationship, whereas the movies, it was just like they love each other because we said so.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels real.
They're not like sand.
Yeah. Exactly. But I like that, and especially, it's sort of been a kind of running joke that Anakin's relationship with her is the worst kept secret in the Jedi Council, especially. And so first of all, the idea that Anakin has basically, there's kind of a teenage, like, high school drama here of, Rex having to watch the door.
Right. He's like, he's working on my helmet. Yeah, my helmet.
And the fact that, so I think it's interesting that what that says about the relationship between Rex and Anakin, but also that Obi-Wan so clearly knows what's going on.
Right, yeah.
Because I think there have been moments before where you're like, how does Obi-Wan not know?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that it seems at this point like Obi-Wan just doesn't agree, but has just accepted it.
Yeah, he's just like, that's how it is. And, like, at least, like, do a better job of pretending if you're going to try and, act like this isn't a thing. Yeah, I mean, I felt like it was, it was a nice kind of between, sort of B plot, right? I mean, it's very small. It's like one scene, and I feel like that's the entire B plot. There isn't really anything else besides, full steam ahead, try and go find Echo. So for an episode that was so heavily actiony and, sort of single objective driven, it was nice to have something that, a character moment. I mean, the only other character thing really is, Rex and his, him making the assumption that Echo's alive, where everybody else is like, well, maybe not.
Yeah. One thing I thought was interesting there was in the original series, one of the plot lines that really gets hammered home is that all of the clones have this very intense devotion to each other, and for good reason. Like, they've never known anything but each other. They all literally are siblings in both a literal, like, genetic sense, but also in how they grew up. And that they have a very strong, like, don't leave anyone behind mentality. And so, even though it might not be rational to some extent, Rex is wanting to do this with Echo makes a lot of sense to me. And at first it threw me, but I really kind of liked that the ones in the Bad Bunch don't seem to feel that. I think it's is it Wrecker is the one who says, like, he's just, why is it such a big deal? He's just a reg.
Right. I'm not sure. I think it was. But yeah, I mean, I think the Bad Batch are like their own separate group, right? Like, they have that same mentality for themselves, for each other, but they see the rest of the clones as just like expendable clones, which, by the way, I think is pretty much how the Republic sees them as well.
Very much so.
And the clones are kind of the only ones who are watching each other's back in a way. I mean, some of the Jedi as well, but it feels like it's probably kind of like a minority of the Jedi. Like, it's not it's sort of the position they're supposed to have in their minds, but maybe not like it really is for all of them.
No, I think it's one of the issues I think that gets really well explored in the TV show, especially in later seasons, is that many of the Jedi do see them as expendable. Some in a real kind of like almost mustache twirly, like, who cares kind of a way. Right. But others, like, it's not that they want to, just in that very, like, I thankfully I've never had to be in this kind of situation, but I have heard often from generals that one of the hardest things about leadership is that to some extent you have to be willing to, accept, that the best way to lose a war is by trying to protect your troops as much as possible.
Right.
And, to me, that's one of the reasons why war is really dumb. But like,
right, exactly. I mean, you in order to do the things that you have to do to win in war, like, it seems like if you stop and think about it, it's just unconscionable, right? And so there's obviously some sense in the mind of anybody, perpetrating war, that the ends justify the means. And so a certain amount of detachment from, the consequences and from the humanity of all those involved, or, the personhood, if they're not human in a world like Star Wars, that has to be sort of divorced in the mind, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think with the clones, you have a further thought of, like, and I'm not saying this justifies it, but I think this can explain where that lack of seeing them as human comes from. Mm-hmm. You don't have the idea of these are people who spent 20 years living their own lives, joined the military, and will hopefully now get to live full lives after the military. These are people who exist just to be soldiers, and I think canonically have a because they were basically
they have
bred
a
to
lower
grow so
life
fast.
expectancy.
Yeah, I think they mostly die out by like 2025 or something.
Right.
And that's part of why, all these clones are gone by the time the next set of movies starts 20 years later.
Yeah, that is something that I wonder about, is like, where'd they go? But there is, I think, the idea that they are kind of infinitely replaceable and that they were literally born and bred for this purpose, which, is, I mean, I think horrible, but obviously in their mind, somehow it was justified by basically relieving the burden from whoever else would have taken those roles, basically.
Right. Well, and one of the things that they never really spell out, it's always done subtly, and so it's when a TV show or a movie is making a subtle point, I always have to wonder, am I giving the writers all the credit they deserve, or am I headcanoning and giving them too much credit?
Yeah,
The idea that I've always sort of gotten out of this is that is all somewhat intentional, and that, part of, and I think the movie The Last Jedi really does a great job of going into this deeper, but also in the Clone Wars, it's explained as well, that, part of the reason the Jedi fall is because they have really lost their way, and they've become really kind of corrupted in a lot of ways. And that, to some extent, the act of having to become generals and having to become wartime leaders, especially of a group of people whose moral value is harder to discern, that's a big part of what leads their downfall. And, again, I think the writers either being subtle or me completely rewriting it for them. But in my mind, that was entirely intentional by Palpatine and Sidious when they got this whole plan of the clones started,
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question to what extent that was deliberate on the part of the creators of all of, the whole canon, basically.
Right.
But I think it's there. It's there to be seen if you want to see it. And I think it's probably a combination of both. I mean, I'm sure there's aspects of it which you're headcanoning,
Yeah.
But, like, that's fine. Like, I don't think there's anything really bad about that in, when someone sets up a world where you can see it kind of a few different ways. I think there's something cool about that in and of itself. That said, it might be nice to have a little more overt, discussion about what's actually going on. And, I do feel like, I mean, Palpatine must be, it's like, he's clearly trying to manufacture conflict, right? Yeah. And, there's an extent to which, like, the Jedi don't really do well with conflicts. Like, they're, like, the idea of them being generals in a intergalactic war, or maybe it's intragalactic, I don't know. But, it's ridiculous, really, right? Like, that's not what they should be.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and if they are, then, like, it should probably be a society where they're the ones running the government, not where they're following the orders of this government that, like, I don't even really understand how the Republic works. Like, it's, like, Queen Amidala is, like, a queen, but she was elected, right? But then there's a chancellor who's, like, I mean, it's like they don't get too deep into the pie. It's like, we're going to have a vote of no confidence. Okay, we did. Okay, now him, and that's fine, right? But, like, the point being, like, depending on how that power structure is created and how it's supported, that maybe influences the extent to which you should follow it and then go around the galaxy enforcing its will.
I think that makes sense, and you're right. And, as much as I would love, an episode on the Constitution of the Republic and the Senate and the exact power structure, we're not going to get that. But I do
the
think
same way you want to see, like, the full text of the Sokovia Accords.
Exactly. Like, I'm a geek that way. But I do think it's a good point. And one thing we see in the original TV show a lot is, the Jedi are all now generals, but they have absolutely no chain of command. Like, there's masters and there's Jedi Knights and there's Padawans, but that's about the only distinctions. And you often have cases where one Jedi says, like, hey, let's do this. And another Jedi, most of the time Anakin, but sometimes Obi-Wan, says, nah, we're going to do something else.
Right.
And sometimes it's like, often the other Jedi will get upset, but in that, we respect that you have the autonomy to make that decision, but we are angry that you're making that decision instead of, hey, idiot, I give you an order, you have to follow orders. That's the chain of command.
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's because the Jedi are, in theory at least, a fairly egalitarian society.
Yeah.
They have these distinctive ranks, but within those ranks, they're all equal.
Right. And I mean, I appreciate that, like, conceptually, you know?
Yeah.
And there's an extent to which I'd say it actually plays out sort of in their favor. I mean, everything obviously goes hideously wrong, or sidiously wrong. But, but yeah, there's all these moments when it's like, well, the council has said this, and it goes, well, I can't hear you. You're breaking up. I'm going through a tunnel, like, you know? and like it seems like there's basically never any consequences for that, you know. And there's really only a few moments like with Ahsoka where it feels like there are going to be consequences. But yeah, this idea that you have like a large group of affiliated independent actors, you know, when coordinating an intergalactic war, like maybe not the best, like strategically, but on the other hand, you know, that sort of distribution of power, I mean, I see basically inherently as a good thing.
Yeah. No, I definitely do, but I think you're right. It's that it's a situation that was not meant for war, and so now that it's in war, there's incredible stresses happening to it.
Yes.
Going back to the clones as well, you know, I love continuity, and this is a show being made, what, like 8 years after the original ended, a long time after. But to get ready for this, I rewatched most of the last season of the original Clone Wars, and I mean, they did a very good job of making it very, very distinctly ending the show.
Right. Of what season 6 did?
Season 6, yeah. It was very much, it seemed at least, you know, they among other things, they discovered that the clones actually were always a Sith plot.
Right.
Yoda has gotten to talk to Qui-Gon Jinn and learn the whole secrets of immortality, and also learned that the Sith are, I mean, he basically confronts Darth Sidious for the first time.
Yeah.
In a way that kind of, and makes you feel like he could probably know it's Palpatine.
Right. It's like, come on, Yoda, bro. Like,
but the biggest thing, and it's just causing a little bit of a wreck in my brain. Not a huge deal, but is that they really discover that the clones were created by the Sith to kind of trap the Jedi in exactly the ways we're talking about.
Yeah,
and maybe like you can't really have a show, and so we're kind of having to retcon that out a little bit. But I think I'm a little frustrated that we're not dealing with that more, you know? Because the aftermath should fundamentally change the relationship between the Jedi and the clones.
Yes.
And we're not seeing whether that's happened or not.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that was already problematic, right? Because at the end of season 6, then the next thing chronologically was Revenge of the Sith, at which, I mean, I don't recall any discussion about, oh, maybe these clones are all going to try and kill us and they're a plot of the Sith, and maybe Darth Sidious is is Palpatine, and like none of that was really picked up as far as I remember. And so I think it's it's tricky when, you know, prequels are always hard, right?
Yeah.
Like you come up with an idea for a series, you make a trilogy, and I mean, George Lucas had already an idea of the prequel trilogy, and I guess he had an idea for a post-sequel trilogy, but that like didn't have anything to do with, I think, what was actually made.
That's correct,
right. But so, okay, if you already have your idea for your prequels when you're writing your current things, that's cool. That's probably going to help a lot, right? Turns out it didn't help as much as we would have liked, but whatever. But, you know, there's maybe some continuity. Like if you go back and you have the prequel trilogy and then there's the original trilogy, okay, there's the difficulty with the, you know, prequelality to the first series. But like then you do Clone Wars, and then now you're doing this prequel to the conclusion of the prequel trilogy, but it's also like a sequel to the second movie, and it's like, whoa, you know, like in terms of continuity, I think that's got to be like a really hard thing to pull off. And, you know, overall, I mean, I think they made a great series, right? And like probably my favorite thing in Star Wars. Although maybe in that other episode I said it wasn't, but it's like, it's up there, right?
Yeah.
Like, it just definitely has the largest amount of content that I really love.
Right.
But there's problems that arise from like trying to, like, how do you come to a conclusion when then you know that there's going to be a bigger conclusion right afterwards that you don't want to, that you can't like spoil and you can't just retell. Like, I kind of wish they just like redid Revenge of the Sith animated, you know? Like,
I just kind of showing it from the different perspective, you know? I don't think that's going to happen, but I would kind of like, I would love it if like one of the last scenes is like, you know, the clones talking about like, yeah, we just carried out Order 66. What was that like for us, you know? And I will say again, like I said,
over a shawarma or something. No,
in the books, the Republic Commandos that I mentioned, I haven't read it yet, but book 4 is called Order 66.
Yeah.
And just as another example of where I think you can, an example I think of doing a prequel well, where it can overlap with the time of what's already happening in a way that I really appreciate. There's a book called Darth Plagueis, which is about, and if I remember correctly, it is no longer part of the official canon, but certainly a lot of the way the movies were made kind of implies that it still is. But it was clearly written like around the time of the sequel movies. Around the time of the prequel movies.
Right. You mean it's set around the time of the prequel movies, or that was when it was actually written?
Both, because it very clearly is written at least after Phantom Menace, because the book is about Darth Plagueis, but it's also then about him recruiting Palpatine. Who becomes Darth, and you know, naming him Darth Sidious and the like.
Right.
And forgive me, I'm gonna. Are you planning to read the book?
Something.
Do you mind if I spoil?
No, go ahead. I actually already know this. I have a friend who's like super into the Sith and like really has explained, you know, the Darth Bane, the Darth Plagueis, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Yeah,
and so it tells the story also of Darth Sidious right up to the point where he kills Darth Plagueis and takes over.
Yeah.
And that happens after the book Phantom Menace. And like during the course of the book, at one point, like, you know, Darth Sidious is starting to think maybe he needs to make his move on Darth Plagueis. And so he goes to try and recruit a new apprentice who at first you're like, this seems kind of familiar. And then he's like, yeah, I W Darth Maul. And you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And then you get to hear all of like Darth Sidious's like having to report to Darth Plagueis about how the plan on Naboo went and how like the Jedi foiled it, but it was just a great other. It was like I
love that. I mean, I haven't read it, but I love that the idea of having that like just the other side of the story that was hidden. You know, I mean, because they show just little moments like of him talking to someone else, but it's like to actually really see the legit behind the scenes like Sith machinations.
Yeah. So I think that I don't think we're going to get that from this show, but
no.
You know, but I you know, for what it's doing, the continuity I think is still pretty damn good.
I agree.
But we're getting that. So we're coming up on 30 minutes. We're trying to make our hard cutoff time. Any kind of last thoughts or opinions or views?
Well, first of all, I really liked your idea of Echo having voluntarily gone and kind of joined but you know, it was pretty much what I thought it was going to be. Which like would have been not at all disappointment, you know, if you hadn't like come up with this better idea. But
sorry,
not that I'm blaming you. Just saying.
Well, it does seem to be actually a real tradition in the podcasts that I'm part of, especially the MCU cast and things, where they basically like rewrite something and then find out that their version was better.
Right, yeah. So on this episode of Matthew Ruins Everything, no,
exactly.
You know, I think the moment where Echo's like, "Oh, you came back for me," and Rex is like, Yeah, I came back for you," which like he did, but like he didn't at the time, right? In the battle. So I wonder if there's, you know, is there going to be any fallout from that?
Yeah, it makes me want to go back and watch the episode where Echo was thought to have died. And I'll look that up actually. And I'll watch it before tomorrow and comment on it, because it's
great. It
does make me wonder, like, did the episode did the episode make us think that like maybe Rex should have tried to find him, or like, hey, you know, he's in a building, it blew up, there's no chance he's still alive, you just go.
Right. I'm curious about that.
Yeah. No, me as well. So Cool. Well, Paul, as always, thank you. We're looking forward to doing this again tomorrow. To our audience, thank you all. Please write in. Let us know what you think. Twitter, Facebook, email, any of those places. Everything in the show notes. Because we were just kind of talking about it, I want to give a quick shout out to Jeff Randle, who is my co-host on the Mandalorian part of the Star Wars Universe podcast. He's also the co-host of the MCU cast and one of the founders of the Stranded Panda Network. He's actually just getting started a podcast called Script Doctors, which is exactly what you and I were just joking about, Paul.
Nice.
Where he's basically going to be like, okay, well, this was a good movie, but it would have been better if we did this and this and this.
Yeah.
I think it is not yet officially launched, but it's going to be launching soon. So fans, if you're into that kind of storytelling, definitely check that out. Check out my other podcast, Superhero Ethics, as well as Binge Assemble, MCU Cast, DC On Screen, all these great podcasts on the Stranded Panda Network that are just, if you're a fan, if you're a geek, if you like going deep on these shows, they're great ways to listen. So thank you very much. We'll be back tomorrow. Have a good day.